And we are recording. And look who I have here today. His name is Gaudencio Marquez. Have I got that correct? And
Yes, good.
his, hey, that one semester of Spanish paid off. And the 4 years of French and 2 semesters of Italian and all that German. Anyway, and you have a wonderful Instagram page called Casa de Larquez.
Yes, yes.
And you have some wonderful pictures of your work there. So tell us everything about you.
Everything. So, Gaudencio Marquez, thank you very much, David, for having me on here. It's an honor and it's a pleasure to be able to engage in this way, right? With other fellow people who do yarn and who appreciate it as much as we do. So, I appreciate the time. Just as a brief introduction, so professionally, I'm a school social worker. I work in schools. I work for a national nonprofit, and I support youth across the nation in different ways, but making sure that they have the resources that they need. I'm also, a crocheter. I've been crocheting for almost 4 years. I believe that I'm working, even though I never got taught by my grandmothers directly. Like I feel like my grandmothers are working through me, and over the years, seeing them crochet as much as they did, I feel like I'm working through them, or they're working through me in some way or another. I'm also sort of a co-owner of Casa de Larquez. We just launched our LLC, which is sort of a crochet boutique lifestyle brand. Not necessarily sure what all that means yet, but it's headed in some direction, which I'm excited about as well. And then recently we launched the Queer Mercado, which is a market for queer LGBT vendors, creators, and folks that are doing great work in the East LA community as well. So that's just a little bit of some of the work that I'm doing, a little introduction on my
You sound like a busy guy.
a little bit, yeah, but I'm enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the work that we're doing. And honestly, like every day, I have to do some form of yarn work. I crochet, I'm rolling up some yarn, something happens throughout. So,
Exactly. Exactly. So you say you've been crocheting for 4 years. What got you started?
you know, just randomly, somebody gave me a loom, and I started to kind of roll up yarn and created some, scarves and stuff. And I realized like I really wanted to learn. I really wanted to learn, and I think that moment of working with yarn and making some creations really sort of sparked an interest that I didn't necessarily know I had. And I started YouTubing, I started reading books, and so eventually I started making, your traditional like scarves and stuff, right? And so, and 4 years later, I found myself, a few months ago, I made a Bernie, a little Bernie. You know how people were making the Bernie
Oh, I think I
sandals?
recall seeing that picture in
Yeah,
your Instagram feed. Yeah.
and I kind of surprised myself. Like there's moments where I'm like, wait, I was able to create that, like, and not necessarily thinking too much of it, but it was kind of cool to be able to know that I was able to make something like that. And so I'm hooked. I was hooked from the beginning, and I just kind of haven't stopped. My husband is always telling me, "You don't need any more yarn." Every time I go back to
Silly
a yarn
boy.
store. So, but here I am. So,
I think that's wonderful. Now, I recall at the time that a lot of people had patterns out for those Bernie mittens
uh huh. Yeah,
because it was January.
it
Um,
was. Yeah.
well, you're in Southern California. I'm in coastal North Carolina. We don't need mittens, but
We don't.
still, it's uh, um, I thought they were fun. Um, I remember when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. I made a lot of those lace collars
Uh-huh.
that she was known for, and offered them up, and nobody wanted them. I've no that that's I've just never been
Uh,
successful selling my work. So right, I've had a lot more success selling my patterns.
okay.
So I mean,
Okay.
but that's just me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you know what? I when I did the Bernie, I didn't sell it at first. Well, what happened is a friend of mine was just like, "Hey, can you make this for me?" And I was like, "Sure, why not? Whatever comes of it is gonna be yours. Like, so don't be mad, right?" And so it came out kind of nice. I posted it on social media. People were like, "I want one." So I decided to fundraise. I fundraised for a local immigrant rights organization, and made a little over $3,000 in auctioning off. Well, it wasn't an auction. It was we raffled off two Bernies, and I did commit to making 10. And so I ended up making 13 total Bernies.
Wow.
It was crazy. At the end of it, I couldn't see the end of the tunnel. Like, I was so overwhelmed with how many Bernies I was making.
So you got burnied out. Yeah.
I really did get burned out. Yeah. But,
So
but yeah,
um,
we made some good money for a nonprofit organization here locally as well. So.
I think that's a great thing. That's a great thing. I was very active with Blue Hat, with Hat Not Hate, with the Blue Hats.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to try to get an interview with Shira from Lion Brand Yarns,
Oh, nice.
who um, but we'll see. I don't know where that's going to go, but she at least acknowledged me on her podcast. You're talking about me too much. Stop me when I do that.
Hey, I want to hear about you too. So.
But that's great. Now you have had a lot of family pictures in your Instagram feed. I think that's really sweet. Wasn't there something that you did for your? Was it your grandmother?
Oh yes, it was my husband's grandmother actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I appreciate about yarn and how it connects us to folks that have been doing this for years. And so my husband's grandmother was a major crocheter. I mean, we have a few of her pieces here as well, and she was just amazed when I started to make the Bernie dolls. She was amazed that I was able to create these little dolls, right? These monitos we were calling them, and she would come in and she would, like, every time I would give her a little update. This is how Bernie's coming out. These are his legs. This is whatever. She's 93 years old. And she was just so amazed. By the end of it, she was so mad that I was about to give it away.
You were watching. You said you needed these.
So
I was just sharing that she was so mad when I told her that I was going to be giving it away. Every morning, she would come in and she would pet it. She would, like, comb his hair. And I was like, no, his hair is actually super all over the place naturally. So, but eventually I told her, I said, I'm going to make one of you. And because I already knew her and she had been living with us for quite a bit of time, I understood sort of her quirks and sort of how she sat a little bit. And so I did end up making one of her, of my husband's grandmother. And she was so, like, right now, she has it next to her bedstand and loves just having her little monita, we call it, right next to her. But,
oh,
yeah.
lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So I love making stuff for family in that way as well. So.
That's cool. I like doing things that people are going to like.
Mm-hmm.
That's of course there comes a time when they say no more crochet gifts, please.
I haven't gotten there yet, but I think that will be a point where people are like, "Can you just stop?"
I mean, some of the things that I've given have gone missing over the years. But that's okay. It's theirs. You know.
They can do whatever they want with it.
Exactly. So so that's cool. Of course, it sounds like family is very, very important to you.
It is. You know, it's one of the things when Casa de Larquez was born out of my husband and I getting married, right? And so Larquez is the combination of both of our last names. He's Lara, Marquez, and decided to join it. And that was sort of our hashtag when we got married. And eventually we thought, like, what is this? You know, I knew that I was really enjoying yarn work and creating. And there came a point where I was like, I think I want to create something more with this. I want to build something here. and named it Casa de Larquez. And so we're co-owners, and we're kind of working through what it means to make this and to build this little business that we have. But I will say that family is a big part of sort of what we're building or what we're attempting to build, whether it's as a family unit, but also in how we engage with our respective families, our community, um, and really sort of thinking about our culture. So like some of the stuff that we're making or that I'm making is really connected back to who I am, right? Within my connections to my family, but also really connected to my culture. And so the shawls and the colors, and sort of this Mexican inspired sort of work, through that. And I just love that. Like one of the things that I appreciate, sort of like for example, the shawls that I've been making recently is that there's such beauty and femininity in it in shawls, that I just love when somebody puts it on and wears it with pride and loves the colors. Like that to me, like just is so meaningful, in the work that we're creating as well. So anyway, so that's family is definitely a big part of
Mm,
who I am and the work that we're building for sure.
that's lovely. And so let's talk a little bit about social media too, because well, like a lot of the really great crafters I meet and asked to do these interviews, I found you on Instagram.
Yeah.
So do you have other social media outlets?
So in terms of me managing social media like pages or
Well, anything you want to share.
so in terms of my social media, Casa de Larquez on Instagram, I've been that's been an interesting sort of space because I've been trying to figure out. Like my husband has been telling me, there's a shift in you. What's going on? Like all of a sudden, like a few years ago, you wanted nothing to do with social media. Like I wanted to do videos with you. You're like no, and now all of a sudden here you are creating. These little TikTok videos, and what's up with that? And so, why are you doing all of that? But so it's been interesting, kind of using the social media platforms to kind of elevate my work, but also I've been having a lot of fun with it. So like Casa de Larquez and creating some of these videos, and sharing pictures of some of my work has been really fun. I also have a personal page under Gaudencio, Gau underscore Dencio, and that's a little bit more family oriented, community oriented. Some of my activism is, goes through that work. A lot of the work that I do with the Long Beach Immigrant Rights Coalition, I post through there. And so that's it. I've been trying to sort of differentiate, and then I'm also really active with the Queer Mercado, and as I was mentioning at the beginning, this is a space where we have been building sort of a self-sustaining space that allows for queer LGBT vendors to or creators to come and build their brands, right? And so we right now have about 50 to 60 vendors that come every third Saturday of the month, to what the high school, Isla Solis High School in East LA. And what we do there is, I mean, one, we have an array of people selling different things. And then we also have entertainers, we have drag performances, we have musicians, we have a bunch of different sort of cool, stuff that's happening. So hopefully someday you can come out here to the West Coast and can
I
experience.
would love to. I would
Um,
love to. And
yeah.
actually, you're the second yarn guy in Southern California I've spoken to recently.
Oh,
Do you
that's
know
great.
Gary Boston, Gary Nitz?
You know what? I saw your interview with him. Yeah, I
I
saw that
mean,
interview.
he also is a really wonderful guy, and also very much into AIDS-related activism and fundraising.
Yes, yes. I saw that. Yeah. I actually did. I believe he's done the AIDS life cycle, right? Because he's a biker, right?
He's done it quite a few times.
Yeah. I've done that 3 times as well. I've done the AIDS life cycle
Oh,
ride.
wow,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
great.
So it's a fun ride. Goes to a good cause, and I really appreciate the community that develops there for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. I knew um, I knew some people who did the Minneapolis to Chicago ride, a number of years ago. They were, not terribly fit people, but they wanted to do it. The really fit biker guys who could do it, in no time at all, they were the most encouraging.
Mm.
And they were saying that the ones for whom it was a real challenge and commitment, they were the heroes.
Mm.
I get like that very easily.
Hey, emotions are beautiful, and I appreciate, there's a lot of memories there, right?
Yeah. And I especially identify with people who are not very fit, because I never have been. But yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
In fact, I couldn't tell him that story when we spoke because I knew I would have been even more emotional telling him.
Yeah. That was, I really appreciated the times that I've done the AIDS led right, is that the community that of people coming together, because I had never ridden my bike other than when I was a kid for that long of a distance, and it was just beautiful to see how people came through to support, to encourage, to just say, hey, look, we're here, we're gonna get through this together, and having, whether the caboose kind of encourage you and move you forward, or the chicken lady. I don't know if you've heard of the chicken lady in
I don't think so.
right? She's a beautiful, beautiful individual who has been doing it every year and leaves you a little egg with a positive, inspiring message at the end of the ride, and then leaves little eggs throughout. And it was just, I mean, community members in that way encouraging each other. It's just such a beautiful thing to see and to experience, and to really know that what we're doing is for the greater good, right? And that a lot of our community members have been impacted by AIDS and HIV, and we have to continue to put that forward, right? So
Yeah, exactly. But it's also, from what I understand, a huge and very often transformational experience for those who participate.
100%, 100%. Yeah, I got my husband to do it one year as well, and he proposed to me right after, actually, a few days after that. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely.
So, and that was the inspiration, and it was actually right after. It was the year that Pulse nightclub, the massacre that happened at Pulse nightclub, and we had already talked about how, in our union, like we were fine on getting married, and it's okay, and but then there was also this piece where after this all happened, and how it happened, coming back from this Ace Life Cycle ride, where we were just so inspired by the community, and he was inspired by that moment and by everything. He's like, this is our moment, like we need to actualize sort of what we're able to do, because so many people have fought for us to be able to get to this place, and to be able to visibly put ourselves out there, and because it is a very revolutionary act for us to be and act, right, in our genuine true selves. And I really appreciated that moment, because he proposed, we got married a year after, and have been very active in the gay community in that way as well. Like, here we are, we're queer, like we want to show you that we're here, and we're not going anywhere, right? And so there's a beauty in that as well.
Now, we could go off on a sidetrack and talk all day long about activism and politics and social presence and portrayal in the mass media and a lot of stuff. But I don't want to get too far off track, which is unusual for me. But so you sort of suggested that your husband is not terribly crafty.
Oh my gosh, no, he's not crafty at all, actually. And sometimes I try to get him to help me with stuff, and he's like, nope, I can't. And I would rather not, because it's just...
If you want something done right, do it yourself.
Yeah. You know what he is really good at? He's really good at writing. He's an academic. He's a professor at a local university. So the writing piece, Totally. Like I'm like, help me figure out how to like describe what I'm doing. Help me,
Oh my
tell the
god.
story about and so that's not my forte. I can create, I can do, I can. Um, I have a very creative mind, so like I can do stuff like that. But the writing aspect of things is a little bit more challenging. So I get him to do all of that stuff.
I love writing. Now I want to meet him too.
Oh, do you? Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes, yes.
because I used to do a lot of writing about music. Now I write about yarn.
Uh huh.
Still a little bit about opera, but not as much. But
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to meet him. But yeah, so it would be fun to visit your Queer Mercado
Yes.
celebrations and
Yeah.
hang out with you guys and meet all of my other California friends.
Hey,
So,
you have to at some point make it out here, and then get us all together, right? Like some of the folks
oh,
that
that
we
would be fun.
haven't
Yeah,
connected.
I gosh, the last time I was in Southern California was 1984. Bet you weren't even born.
No, I was.
But yeah, it's like I've come to realize this one time on choir tour is the very same thing as this one time at band camp.
Hey, I did go to band camp too.
Uh oh. I'm sure there are stories there too.
That is really funny.
But
Um,
yeah.
I was gonna share also that when you asked me about social media, one of the things that I forgot to mention was about how the Queer Mercado one of the things that we've done recently is we started to do something similar to what you're doing. It's called Queer Magic Wednesdays, where we are highlighting um, queer community members and just sharing their magic, whether it's what they create, they do, they are business owners, and just kind of sharing why they do what they do. And so I'm really like excited about that space, similar to like what we're doing
That
here now.
sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, getting to know people on a deeper level is just so beautiful to be able to do that, right? And so, um,
Yeah, that's actually somebody asked me today um, whether I was ever going to interview any straight yarn people. Um, and I have actually. I've interviewed several. Um, but it's just the population within the male yarn community. And people tease me because I always get these good looking men and I always flirt with them. Don't know why they think that, but I've got to stop knocking this table, really. Um, but it's fun. I would love to see. Have you been posting these interviews or
I have, yeah,
conversations?
I
Are
have.
they in both Spanish and English?
They're all in English, and so there is some Spanish that kind of happens, but it's all English, and they're through the Queer Mercado, that Instagram page, and um, but I should probably start posting them a little bit more on my page, the Casa de Larquez page as well.
Have you done YouTube?
No, I have not actually. I haven't.
Okay, yeah. So, well, I'm going to ask you to send me, any photos of your work that you want to, but also send me any links that you would like me to share as well. And I think that would be a really good one. In fact, I did look at that page just a little bit before we met up today, and found it interesting. Just beginning to understand what it's about.
Yeah,
But
of course. Yeah, no, thank you. I will definitely send you a few things, and
yeah.
appreciate
Do you
that.
have anything at hand that you can show us, like works in progress or finished objects? I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you
To
to
prepare
be
something.
prepared that way.
No, no. So I did this. A friend of mine wanted a blanket, so I made this huge granny square. So I literally just started. I finished this one yesterday. So I don't know if you can see.
That is big.
It's a big
Is
one, and
that
then here, huh?
what weight of yarn is that?
This is a bulky 5. Yeah. Let me show you. Actually, oh, I think I can show you this. Give me 1 second. Can you see this here? Oh, let me push this way. I
Yeah,
just finished this one. So I just finished her, and so this one is one of the shawls that somebody ordered that shawl recently. And I really like it. Really like the colors. And you know what's been kind of cool? It's just been identifying different yarns and then combining them. And so I combined 3 different yarns at this one. Well, not different, but just different colors.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really appreciate sort of what I'm, where my mind is going with some of it as well.
So then over the years, have your tastes in yarn changed? Mine over the years have become a lot more posh. So and so, but my budget has not. So
I know yarn can be so expensive. I can't. Yeah, that's been an issue for me as well, and especially when I go out to some of the more boutique yarn spaces. I love going to them, and I love buying stuff from them. But before you know it, you're like, wait, 3 balls of yarn for this much.
yeah, we used to go when I was in New York. My ex and I used to go up to the New York Sheep and Wool Festival in Rhinebeck. A lot of people have heard of Rhinebeck if they haven't heard of the full name of the festival. And my gosh, the yarn dyers and spinners that you could see there, and you could see the sheep too.
Oh my
And one of my favorite parts was the vendors hall with all kinds of regional vendors of like foods and wines and lots of fun stuff too. So, but I would buy so much yarn that I was then afraid to use because it was so expensive.
And then what do you do with it, right? Like, I mean, other than keeping it or giving it as gifts.
I know. I might frame it.
Exactly.
I have some yarn that I actually wanted to give away. It was hand spun yarn. It could be used as it is, or it could be dyed, but it was hand spun by a friend of mine.
Mm.
So if I were to do something that I was not pleased with it would break my heart.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want to do. I some of my patterns I have done over and over and over again, and I'm tired of them. And then some of them, I don't know that it's enough. So I don't know what to do. So it's like frozen by fear.
Yeah.
Or as they say, paralysis by analysis.
That too. Yeah. We're overthinking it sometimes, right? But that's part of the creative process.
I never overthink anything. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. I've never even heard that phrase.
Exactly. Hopefully someday maybe I can jump into some of the yarn, like actually dyeing and making yarn. I would love to do that at some point as well. Have you ever done
I've never done yarn dyeing. That's why I'm afraid to touch this stuff. What I need to do is get some other undyed yarn and just practice with it before I do this.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. And there are lots of instructional videos out there on YouTube about yarn dyeing with all different kinds of substances, from food coloring to Kool-Aid to like real fabric dyes. So I'll stick to the Kool-Aid maybe. Yeah, but the really posh yarns, I'll buy them because usually it's because of the color, because color really gets me.
Yeah, same here.
And then I won't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The struggles. Exactly. Oh my goodness.
Whatever shall I do? But on the other hand, it's also first world problems. So
100%. 100%.
Wow, that's fun. So then, there was another extremely important and revealing question I was going to ask, but I've forgotten it, so we'll move on. But it'll come back to me at the most inopportune time. Um, so what other things fill your life? Um,
What other things? You know, other than yarn and my work and my social media, um, I will say like what can I share? I mean, I love actually, you know what? I love plants. I have so many plants in my house. That is a big part of what I do here in my house as well. And so I think it's a lot of it is using my hands that I really appreciate, doing and engaging in. But I live in a community here that is just so diverse, but also like I love to just sit at a coffee shop nearby and crochet, and I sit there and I crochet. The other day, it was funny because this woman just approaches me randomly, and I think it's really weird to me that people are still like amazed that a man crochets, right? And it's kind of it's whatever. I mean, it's the society that we live in, and that's part of the reason why you're doing what you're doing to highlight some of this work. But she comes up to me and she goes, congratulations. And I said, huh? What are you talking about? What did I just do? She goes, I love seeing men crochet. And I said, okay, that's great. I appreciate it. Thank you. She goes, so congratulations that you're out here doing it publicly. And I said, okay, great. Thank you. So it's just so random. But to the point is that I just love just sitting and observing.
did you congratulate her that she knew it was crochet and not me?
Right? I should have done that.
I've often told the story that the people come up to me and they say, "I've never seen a man knitting before," and I'll say, "Well, you still haven't because this is crochet."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
Although it's funny, my ex picked up knitting, and then he got me back into crochet because I learned as a kid. So he picked up knitting and became very, very good at it. Still is. But we used to, when we were in New York, he's still there. We would get like on the commuter train going into the city, and um, he would pull out a project and start working on it. I had the best time watching other people watch him. It was like amazing to them because I'm sure a lot of guys would never have even thought about it, and then they would see like the care he was taking and the skill that it required, and he can make some really, really fine stuff, and so it really had to impress them. um, that was
I
always
think,
fun.
yeah. And so, what were some of the things that you noticed that people were like? It was just like a shock, or would they say anything as you were
Well,
observing?
sometimes they would, and then there was one. I think it was our first time when we came down here to Wilmington together to visit, and we went into a local yarn shop here, and there were some old ladies who were leaving, and they just found it the most surprising thing in the world to see two men going into a yarn shop.
It is what it is. Yeah,
Yeah,
I find
I'm
it so
going.
fascinating.
Yeah, well, that was also over 10 years ago, and I think that there's been a lot of change in those 10 years.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I've realized in this process is that like I find myself I'm a little bit ADD sometimes, right? I'm all over the place, and my mind goes to different places. Crochet actually calms me down. Crochet actually helps me focus. And so I've been talking to folks who teach kids how to crochet or how to knit. And it's the young boys that find themselves really engaged in that process and sitting there and chatting. And so whenever I've done, and so I'm actually thinking about doing some work with youth, in that way as well, and kind of teaching them how to yarn and how to crochet, how to knit, how to create with using yarn as well. And so I used to do like, I mean, as a school social worker, I used to work with youth directly, and so middle school specifically. And I would walk with the boys instead of sitting with them. And I think like teaching somebody how to crochet and be able to talk, it's such a beautiful sort of place to like engage somebody with. And so, anyways, I'm just sharing sort of potential future ideas that.
Oh, that sounds really great. And And most people know that that is how, well, basically how you get a boy or a man to communicate is you get to focus on something else, and then he'll just relax and share. But if you ask him directly, what are you feeling? You know,
It's not gonna work. No, no,
no,
no.
no.
And we're overgeneralizing here too, right? Because there
Well,
are some,
yeah,
men, but
that's
but
true.
I find myself like the moment that I start to crochet and do something with my hands, my focus becomes clear. My ability to listen to you is going to be so much clearer when I'm doing something with my hands. So,
Exactly, exactly. And I have spoken in this series. I've spoken with men who are combat veterans
mm,
who use it to help with PTSD issues. And they start teaching other veterans and find that they also um, find it a real help with PTSD issues. I speak with people who refer to it as a prayerful practice.
mm, mm.
I like to think of it in terms of being an overthinker. Not that I know what that means. Um, in terms of like the mental process, where there's a certain type of brain activity when you are like totally focused and lose track of time,
Mm,
and that happens to me sometimes when I'm crocheting,
mm,
and sometimes when I'm writing.
yeah.
And it used to happen when I was singing. It happened to me sometimes then as well. So yeah, that's
Yeah. Sorry.
no. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I appreciate you sharing that in that way because it's such, I mean, a form of prayer, right? When you're using your hands, a sort of meditation of sorts, right? And I think that this is so important for us to start breaking down these gender norms and these gender expectations because our ability to engage in practices like crocheting and knitting as men is just so therapeutic, so cathartic in different ways, and it's important for us to be able to access and and the younger folk and even us older folk like being able to like really understand that these are forms of or ways that we can start to heal whatever trauma we've experienced
Exactly, and
so
also sharing. I had I don't have it here with me, but I had some yarn that I had bought from a friend who was a hand dyer.
mm,
Um, Not very cheap yarn, but I made it was sort of an abbreviated version of one of my shawl patterns, so it's great for a scarf. Not that I ever need a scarf here in Wilmington, but it's never leaving my hands, though. I'll tell you that. But I can look at it and I see that it's a part of me and a part of him.
mm,
Because I mean, he created the yarn and he is amazing with color. He was actually the very first interview that I did for this series.
mm.
Um, and I have some other yarn from him that I haven't used yet because I'm just waiting to hear what the yarn tells me.
Mm, mm. Oh, yeah. I need to go and buy some of your patterns. I want to be able to make some of them.
Well, after we do this, I'll do a discount code for you.
Okay, cool.
But what was I going to say? But that's the sort of thing when there's that connection, and
Yeah.
like if you're doing something for someone specifically, like the creations that you do for your husband's grandmother, and that you, um, I think you said that both of your grandmothers were passed before you started crocheting.
Yeah, well, I still have one of my grandmothers that's alive, but she has dementia, and so she's so actually recently I gave her a shawl that I made, and she's always really cold. She's almost 90 years old, and she lives in Guadalajara, and it was this moment that was just so beautiful that I was able to connect with her. I mean, even though she doesn't necessarily fully remember me, and most of the time, there are moments that I'm like, remember, I'm Juancito, I'm the little boy, your grandson. And she's like, oh my God. And I was like, I made this for you. And she looks at it and she's like, oh my gosh. Like it was just a very, very heartwarming moment where it was sort of a full circle moment. Like even though I never learned directly from her, I was able to gather sort of this beauty over the years and watching her create and do. Because she did a lot of different things, and to be able to come back and say, "Hey, grandma, I made this, right? Like this is such a beautiful piece." Well, I thought it was a beautiful piece, but it was something that she I was able to gift her, and was very honored to be able to do that. And similar to how you're describing your, you know, there's a piece of different people in these pieces, right?
And that intention is part of the piece.
Yeah,
Not everybody's going to be aware of
That's
that.
what I thought.
This is my phone speaking. You heard that? I
That
love it.
was perfect timing.
I was like, "Whoa, what is this?" That is
but
really
but truly, not everyone is going to be aware of that, and that's okay too.
yeah.
But in fact, well, I don't know if I ever talked to Daniel much more about this yarn stuff. Um, or he would probably get uncomfortable with it. But so now we talked a little bit about color, and just looking at a lot of the pictures of things that you've made, I can see that you love color as much as I do.
I do. I love
Yeah.
color. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, color is such a especially when you're able to like combine different colors and create. I actually just bought a pattern from this guy in what's his name, Alex creates in I think he's in New York or something, and he created this sweater, and so it's colors, but it's also like patterns, right? And so the non-traditional patterns are what I like gravitate towards, and so I'm gonna make myself the sweater that he created. Or that he created a pattern for it, and I'm just so excited because he creates these stripes of colors, and so now I'm thinking, what colors am I gonna use, right? Like I want to make it as bright as possible, but yeah. So
Well, that sounds lovely. I'll have to look him up, certainly.
yeah, hmm yeah,
So yeah, I love that sort of thing. There is someone who is on Facebook and on Etsy. His Etsy store is called Seahall Fashions, Seyhall, and his name is Richard Seymour, Seymour.
mm.
He's British, but he does the most amazing menswear patterns.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I'd recommend you look for his patterns.
I'm gonna look for
So
that for sure.
I don't know whether he's on Instagram, but he is on Facebook. He's the owner of one of the men's knit and crochet groups on Facebook too.
Nice. Okay.
So yeah, colors are fun. Have you done your own designs aside from the Bernie
No,
doll?
no, not, totally not there yet at all. But maybe someday. Right now,
So that's on your maybe list.
maybe. Yeah.
What about the yarn dyeing?
That is something that I would love to like consider doing. And it's the yarn spinning. And when I see people spinning yarn, like it, I'm like, I want to get there someday. I mean, having a full time job and trying to do like this other stuff, like I think eventually I'm gonna do that for sure. And then I'm also really like, what is it called? It's not macrame. I guess it is macrame. That's also something that I mean, just yarn work in general is something that I'm like gravitating towards and finding more.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to find the
Yeah,
time.
I think there are variations of macrame. I don't know the names of all of them,
Yeah.
but I remember in the '70s when I was a kid, in public school art classes, we would do macrame sometimes.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Uh, if it was interesting, but I don't remember much of it.
Yeah.
But it's coming back. Macrame is.
Yes, it definitely is. I see it all over Instagram right now. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What about knitting?
I don't know how to knit. A friend of mine recently gifted me all of her knitting um, needles, and so I have this whole bag of them, and so I'm committed to learning though. That will be my next piece for sure. Learning how to knit
Well, yeah.
needles.
Knitting is a mystery to me.
Is it
Um,
so you don't know? No.
there's still a lot that I want to accomplish with crochet
Mm.
before trying to learn something new,
Yeah.
and uh, it just looks like it's so much more difficult.
It is. I've heard it's a slower process, and I've seen it be a little bit slower in terms of. But we'll see. I'm kind of looking forward to that. So,
Well, I look forward to seeing what kinds of stuff you create when you start knitting. That'll be fun.
that would
So
be.
you touched on sweaters and other kinds of menswear. Do you have the opportunity to wear the things that you create very often?
No, not recently. I actually made my husband some shorts a few months ago, and I had him wear it. He's like, "Please don't post these."
You can send those pics to me privately too.
I made them a lot smaller than I expected them. And those are some of the things that I'm still learning. Because you're right, like there is so much to learn in the crochet world, right? And so those are some of the things in terms of sizing and what that. It's
there
just
there are some patterns out there for some naughty garments and also
I've seen.
naughty amigurumis.
I see. Yep. Actually, some of the folks that are part of the Queer Mercado are selling some risque stuff, and I love it. Like I love that people are creating outside of your traditional doilies, right? And so now it's like creating all kinds of stuff through crochet and through some of the yarn. So it's great
Mm,
to see that.
it's interesting. I remember many years ago when I was still in New York. I was an office temp at the time, and I was working in the offices of a major fashion house, and it was like I so didn't belong there. But they had done like a photo shoot that included a woman model in a crochet bikini. It
Oh
wasn't anything that this designer was offering, but they got so many calls about that crochet bikini.
no.
I don't know why they would include it in the photo shoot if it wasn't
Hmm.
something that they had on offer, but I don't understand those
Yeah.
things. Because I so did not belong there. They tried to send me there, and I said, I can't go there. I'm sartorially challenged. But
Yeah.
anyway, oh wow, wow. So what else shall we talk about? There's one more thing that I can't remember what it was. It'll come to me. But um, do you feel like talking about your work as a school social worker?
I can. Yeah. I mean that's I've been doing that work for almost 15 years, and as a part of the reason I went into education, I wanted to become a teacher at some point, and I was working in the school system for a bit, and realized that a lot of the kids that we were working with were dealing with so many different other factors and barriers and challenges. And that's when I realized that as a school social worker, I could help mitigate some of these barriers and these challenges. And that's why I went into that work. And I've been doing that for a little over 15 years in different capacities. And so I was working as a foster care social worker for a little bit, and then went into schools, um, and I've loved it since, right? Because I think that it's such an important work when we think about our school system, especially now. Like kids are coming back into schools with so much trauma, with so many mental health challenges, and we've gone through an incredibly traumatic period as a everybody, right? Like we've all gone through an incredibly traumatic period, and some of us have experienced more than others because of the inequities that exist, right? And so it's important for us to really sort of look at how in our school system we're not just thinking of how are we teaching, but also how are we meeting students' needs, their mental health and their basic needs. And so that's why I became a school social worker on that front. And yeah, and I mean it's just I'm moving more and more into a direction where what are some preventative things that we can start to do, especially in our community, in our queer, LGBT communities of color specifically? Like, what are some of the things that we can start? And that's why I'm so like engaged with this Queer Mercado, because it's about like creating self-sustainable work. It's making sure that we are honoring sort of our passions and our creative sort of juices, and then creating a space for us to uplift each other and uplift our brands and uplift sort of the work that we want to be able to create, and not depend on anybody, right? And so some of us are not able to access 9 to 5 jobs, right? Whether it's because of immigrant status or discrimination because of, a person identifies as gender non-binary or transgender, right? Like, how do we sort of create these spaces? And that's why I've been, so like now I'm kind of navigating to these other waters that I hadn't before, but it's all sort of connected. Like, I see it manifest itself in the school system and how children sometimes don't necessarily see themselves in different spaces, whether it's media or our education system or our leaders. And so now it's like creating these opportunities for us to really be able to, so like for example with this Queer Mercado, we're connected with the school, and the school is now, we're donating a big part of the funding that we make into the school, and now we're trying to figure out a way where the school sees us as part of their community, and sort of bridging those gaps that exist, right? And creating sort of a gay straight alliance at a school that it doesn't exist, right? And so anyway, so it's all kind of connected.
So it sounds like you get excited about creating programs and writing curricula.
I do, yeah, I do, and I'm more and more trying to figure out how to infuse sort of these passions, right? Like this work, my yarn work, and how do I infuse it into? Because I know that it's positive, it's cathartic, it's therapeutic, it's going to allow us to heal. How do I infuse that into some of my work as a social worker? But then also, what are some of those bigger picture things that we need to start doing differently?
Yeah,
Right?
you were talking about how some of the boys were the most invested when they were learning this, and I had a story about someone I knew who was an art therapist who worked with like these adolescent youth kids, and some of the toughest boys, she would say, were the proudest of whatever it was that they had created, and it was like, look what I can do.
Yeah, that's right.
And it might have been the first time in their lives they've been able to say that. Who knows?
Yeah, and I love that. I love hearing stuff like that, because you're right. And then as a society, we kind of mess it up. We're like, no, you can't be doing that because you're a boy. Like, come on, like here's
I
people
think, yeah, I think we give far too much weight to what we think society says. I mean, there's a character in a 19th century operetta whose name is really Social Opinion, and it's a comedic operetta, of course, and that's her function is, and we haven't learned. We've learned a little, but not enough.
Yeah, we still have a long
But
ways
it's
to go.
true of every age, I guess. I'm sorry.
We still have a long ways to go, but we definitely are moving in a positive direction. So,
I think so. I think so.
I mean, especially with spaces like this to be able to like highlight some of the work that, yeah, we're breaking down these gender binaries that exist, and so I appreciate you for engaging me in.
Well, I think the work that you do is like incredibly important, both in well, working with any kind of at-risk youth in the first place, working with the LGBTQ youth, and also spreading the evangel of yarn. So, I you've got that smile. I told you what would happen if you flashed that smile at me. But yeah, I mean, who wouldn't be impressed and thrilled to know you? So, gosh, sometimes this is usually about the length of an interview. Sometimes we go longer, sometimes it's shorter, but I think that we've covered an awful lot of territory, and I'm really grateful that you came and spoke with me today. It's been really great. Do you have anything you want to add in closing?
No, no, I thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit of my story and some of what inspires me and motivates me to continue this work. So I thank you. Appreciate
I think that your work is very important, and I'm happy that we could have you here. And I'm also happy that our viewers who have stuck with us this long are still here. And, you know, as I always say, like, comment, share, subscribe, all the standard YouTube stuff. Well, I often don't say stuff, but yeah, it's been a real pleasure. So I'm going to end the recording now, but you'll still be in the studio.
Mhm.